Can I see everyone's beautiful faces?
I have to go back and get one.
Sorry, I don't think you'll find it. State of Wisconsin versus Adrian Henry, 19 CF 4997. Appearances, please.
Jim Griffin for the state.
That one's not working. Oh. Mr. Adrian Henry appears in person in custody, but with Amanda Parent. Good afternoon, Your Honor.
All right, to Mr. Henry, good afternoon and welcome. And to the attorneys, welcome as well. Counsel, what do you wish done in this matter?
Your Honor, we would ask the court to proceed with sentencing at this time.
And again, you file a sentencing memorandum as well, which has been reviewed.
That's correct, Your Honor, and I apologize for the delay in when that was filed.
All right, if there can be a statement of the offense for which sentencing is to occur, and then the maximum penalties that has to be stated in the record. And then if there were at the time of the change of plea discussions that the attorneys noted, could those also be stated?
Judge, the offense to which Mr. Henry pled guilty is an armed robbery. That's a Class C felony. The maximum possible penalties are a $100,000 fine or imprisonment for not more than 40 years, or both. The bifurcated sentence on the 40 years is bifurcated into maximums of 25 years of initial confinement and 15 years of extended supervision. And the agreement in this case was that the state would recommend, that I am recommending, since we're here for sentencing today, I guess is a better way to put it, 4 years in prison, bifurcated into 2 years of initial confinement and 2 years of extended supervision. I'm going to ask for a restitution hearing date, so we can complete the sentence with the exception of restitution.
Thank you. Attorney Parent, is that accurate?
That is accurate, yes.
And defense be free to argue?
Correct.
All right, with that in mind then, I thank you for that information. I'll now look to all parties, beginning with District Attorney Griffin. Sir.
Judge, on November 5th of last year at the RK Liquor Store over at 2500 West State Street, the defendant comes in and comes out several times during the day. And at one point, around 5, he comes in, buys a 6-pack and leaves, then comes back in again about 20 minutes later. Didn't buy anything. At 6 o'clock, he comes in and they told him to leave because the store was busy. And the defendant responded, quote, "Shut the F up." He eventually goes into the area where the employees are working and shows a handgun, points it at one of the individuals. So he doesn't just display a gun, which, as we know, is usually more than enough, and most victims at that point are compliant. He pointed at the victim and told him to open the register. He did that. BS is the individual's name, initials, and the defendant takes the money. They estimated that he got between $3,000 and $4,000 in cash during the robbery. 6 o'clock on at a liquor store, that doesn't strike me as a lot of money. I've seen some of the more franchise stores that they're constantly putting money into a safe, but at a liquor store like this, they wouldn't be doing that.
And what was the amount of money again?
They said between, at the time, $3,000 and $4,000.
Okay, thank you.
So was that B as in boy?
B as in boy, S as in Sam. The defendant, in a statement to the police, saw video stills and admitted that that was him. He, as outlined in the complaint, he talks about grabbing a bag of money and walking out, swinging it, and walking out of the store, and then he tossed the bag of money and fled the scene. Again, that strikes me as an odd explanation for things. Why you would go all through this, get the money, and toss it makes no sense. But in any event, that was at the time the defendant's statement. I show no prior criminal record for Mr. Henry. He had a prior contact, for a case, 10 years ago, just a misdemeanor obstructing. I mean, it's nothing. The court, with all due respect, should give that, in my opinion, no weight. He's a 27-year-old man, and for most armed robbers, although as we know just from our work here this week, not all, that's late in the game to be coming into the system with an armed robbery. Most armed robbers start a lot younger. I know a lawyer earlier today tried to say that his client only had a knife, not a gun. And I think we all agree there's incredible danger with a knife, but not quite as much danger as with a gun. A gun is sort of top of the line in terms of danger and top of the line fear for a victim when they have a gun pointed at them, not just displayed. So that's the situation Mr. Henry's in. The state is recommending a relatively, relatively short prison sentence. I realize that 2 days in prison, I'm sure 1 day in prison probably feels like a lot, especially your first time. But again, when you're pulling a gun on a guy at the liquor store who he's just trying to make a living, that's all he's doing. And he's just doing what you're supposed to. He's got a job, he's working, and Mr. Henry comes and takes. And the only reason he's able to take, of course, is because of the gun. Without the gun, this isn't going to happen. So, as a community, we struggle with armed robberies day in and day out. We can't quite figure out how to get people to not do it. But so what we do is, since it's such a serious Class C felony, from the district attorney's perspective, we believe that prison is appropriate in this case for Mr. Henry. Thank you.
Counsel, thank you. Attorney Parent.
Thank you, Your Honor. We are asking the court to impose 4 years in the Wisconsin state prison system, 2 years in and 2 years out, but impose and stay that for 3 years of probation. We would ask the court to consider conditions to include 40 to 50 hours of community service per year, and mental health evaluation and treatment if appropriate, anger management, and any other conditions that the court deems appropriate. I would note as well that Mr. Henry has 281 days of sentence credit. I did file that sentence credit form with the court. Mr. Henry comes before this court as a 27-year-old man with no criminal record and no juvenile adjudication. I think Attorney Griffin sort of touched on this, that is sort of rare to have someone with, one police contact 10 years ago for a misdemeanor, really no contact with the criminal justice system to come before the court with an armed robbery conviction. And we do acknowledge that this is a serious offense, Your Honor. In my discussions with Mr. Henry, we always circle back to the seriousness of the offense and the fear that he instilled in the workers there. When Mr. Henry went to the liquor store that day, he did go in there with good intentions. His girlfriend, Khadijah, Khadejah, had a bad day. He wanted to go there, get her favorite type of margarita mix or tequila, I believe it was, or Cuervo, and to get her favorite candy. When he was in there, he couldn't find what he was looking for, and the store owners were not being helpful, and they were being disrespectful to him. They had asked him to leave at one point because the store was busy when there was only 4 other people in there. He did leave and come back in, and Mr. Henry took this disrespect very much to heart, and that led to anger. And it's anger that led to this incident. It wasn't a matter of poverty issues, which is often something we see. Mr. Henry and his girlfriend were both gainfully employed at the time. This was not a matter of drug addiction that fueled this. Really, it was anger. And I will touch on that later on in my sentencing argument. But that's essentially what happened here. The gun was not loaded. Mr. Henry, as he, I believe, told the police as well, he took the clip out of the gun and there was not a bullet in the chamber. So while no one could have been shot by that gun, he realized as though the clerks didn't know that. The clerk did not know that, and he understands that is still terrifying to have to see someone with a gun pointed at you. So we're not trying to minimize it in that sense, Your Honor, but we do think that's an important fact for the court to know. Mr. Henry didn't get anything out of it. The state had noted that he threw that bag of money out, as he stated to me, and I consistent from the beginning, he threw the money in the bushes. And I think that's consistent with the fact, Your Honor, that Mr. Henry never posted his bail. His bail was set at $3,000. If he had taken between $3,000 to $4,000, he would have posted his bail. His bail's been lowered to $1,000 actually, and he still didn't post his bail. And I think that's consistent with the fact that he didn't take that money. And that's because he didn't go in there with the intention to take that money, but his anger took over. And he lashed out in a way that he recognizes was wrong. He was cooperative with the police afterwards. He gave a full statement. He identified himself in still photos, and was forthcoming with the officers. I think it's important to note that the witnesses in this case actually did not identify Mr. Henry in a photo lineup. I think if it wasn't for Mr. Henry's cooperation with police, the state would have had a more difficult case if this case were to proceed at trial. But Mr. Henry's forthcoming statement sort of sewed up any sort of potential loose ends that the state's case may have had. I want to talk about Mr. Henry's character, and I want to start first with his anger. And in the sentencing memo, I do think that that gives a very good summary, and I want to make sure I don't read verbatim the sentencing memo. I do know the court's had a chance to look at it, but under the education portion and the summation portion on page 9, it notes that Mr. Henry did grow up with bullying. He had behavioral issues at school, and that his mother noticed that he had anger issues. Things did get better for him, but I think this is something that has always stuck with him. And again, as it states in the memo prepared by Jeff Cottam, COTTAM, on page 9, in seeking an explanation of his unconscionable and uncharacteristic actions from that day, it's conceivable that Adrian's anger that haunted him as a child, and for which had long remained buried, had resurfaced at a most inopportune moment and in an unfortunate way, skewing his judgment and influencing his behavior. And I think that is exactly what we have here, Your Honor, which is why the anger management programming would be extremely beneficial to Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry is a very good person, Your Honor. I've had the chance, I've been working with him since November of this year. I have had the chance prior to COVID, he would meet a lot in person at the jail. And I can tell that he does have a very good heart. He's a very caring person, really is concerned about his family. Never once does he really try to be like, for me. It's always, I feel so bad that I'm not out helping my girlfriend. I feel so bad that I'm not out supporting her daughter. He's a very selfless and kind person, so he does have a very good character to him. In regard to his family, Mr. Henry grew up not knowing who his father was. And he was the youngest of 12 children with a single mom. There were, as it notes in the sentencing memo, they had financial struggles, but luckily Mr. Henry had a mom that was very strong and supportive, and he had a strong bond with his 11 siblings. His mother instilled very good morals in him. In page 3 of the sentencing memo, it notes that Mr. Henry says his mother said, "Never leave a woman to carry the bags," which he interpreted as never let a woman care for children on her own. And so I do think that while they may have had their struggles, they still also had a lot of care and support growing up. Mr. Henry, in turn, took care of his mom as she took care of him as a child when she had kidney renal failure. He had put off college at that time. He had graduated from Custer High School, put off college so that he could start working to support his mother. In June of 2014, his mother had passed away, and that is something that he still very much struggles with. When I've spoken with Mr. Henry about that, it almost seems like it happened yesterday. You can just tell from his emotions that this is something that has not yet been addressed in full. The sentencing memo notes that he had always been with his mom in the hospital, and that one day she told him to go home and get some sleep, and he thought that was her way of trying to have him leave so that she would not see her pass away, and unfortunately that's exactly what happened. And to add to that trauma, Your Honor, in September of 2016, his sister that he had a very close bond with growing up was murdered while she was 4 months pregnant. So certainly there is some underlying unaddressed trauma that I certainly believe could be addressed through probation. I have noted that Mr. Henry does have a girlfriend, Asia. They've been together for over a year and a half. He had been living with her and her 5-year-old daughter prior to his arrest in this case. He has become the father figure to her daughter. In fact, he considers her, or he considers her his daughter, because unfortunately, her father has decided to live a different lifestyle that involves the criminal justice system, and it's not there for her. But she is very lucky to have Mr. Henry. He would always play with her. I know Miss Khadijah's letter had noted that she misses him. I think it's funny in the letter submitted to the court from Ms. Eubanks, Eubanks, Khadijah, that at times her daughter would actually favor Mr. Henry over her, which she actually liked. So I think that speaks to him really stepping into that father role, which was consistent with the advice that his mother gave him, to never let a woman take care of the child on her own. Even though that's not his biological child, he loves that daughter as if he were his own, and he does consider her his daughter. And he also took care of them financially as well. Khadijah is very supportive. I've had several contacts with her throughout this case. She has come to court. She was unable to be here today, but she is watching on YouTube. I provided her with the link. She indicated she would be watching, and she's very supportive of him. I think her letter to the court shows how highly she speaks of him, that he has a kind heart, he's hardworking. She described him as too nice at one point. They talk about that they want to have a child, and that he is a family man. And as Mr. Henry stated in the sentencing memo, he realizes he can't be a father inside the walls of a jail. He simply can't, and that he wants to be there for his family, and that when him and Ms. Eubanks do decide to have a child one day, he needs to be there supporting his child, which I certainly believe he would do. Mr. Henry does have a lengthy employment history. I won't go through everything as it's laid out in the sentencing memo, but prior to arrest, he'd been working at Marshall Public Safety as a security guard. He has a very hard work ethic. It notes in the memo that once he gets out, he wants to start working. He said he doesn't care what job it is, he wants to be working. He understands that he may have to start with temp agency, but he wants eventually to build a career. I think that's also reflected in Ms. Eubanks' letter, that he is someone that feels that if he's not working and supporting his family, he's not doing things right. And I think that speaks very highly to his work ethic. I'm asking the court in this sentence to consider the collateral consequences of the conviction here. There will be difficulty for Mr. Henry to gain employment now that he has a felony conviction, especially given the fact he's worked as a security guard. He can no longer work as a security guard if that requires him to carry a firearm, since he cannot possess a firearm for the rest of his life. He will also have that felony label for the rest of his life, which is something, when I talked to him, it's something he's always wanted to avoid, and it's very sensitive to the stereotypes that come along with that label. It's known in the sentencing memo, he saw his neighborhood change and witnessed violence growing up, that he saw his mother's friend's son die in the middle of the street at age 16. So he has seen that, and he wanted to distance himself from that. He notes that along with the felony label comes the stereotypes of a thug or a criminal, which whenever I talk to Mr. Henry, he's always said, that's not me. I'm not like that. And so I know he's very sensitive to that, and that's something that he's trying to avoid. But unfortunately, he does have that label for the rest of his life. So I'd ask the court to take that into consideration. Finally, Your Honor, I would like to touch on why I don't think prison is appropriate in this case. I do think it's appropriate to have imposed with state, but I don't think it's appropriate sentence at this point. The first is dealing with programming. When the sentencing memo notes that the House of Corrections mental health practitioner noted that Mr. Henry would benefit from anger management, from prison loss class, and from, I believe Mr. Henry categorized it as sort of getting your mind right, which would be about him feeling down and feeling depressed. That sort of programming, it's my understanding that the DOC is really, everything is sort of shut down right now, Your Honor, that there isn't really programming right now, that if he were to go to prison, there's no guarantee, and it's highly unlikely that he would be able to engage in the programming that he needs. With the unpredictability of COVID, if he were to serve that 2 years, we don't know when those programs are going to start up again. On the flip side, Your Honor, if he was given probation, he could engage in programming fairly quickly, even if it is over Zoom. So I think it's important that we get Mr. Henry into programming as soon as possible to address these issues so we don't see him back here, which I don't anticipate. He is very open to programming as well, which you have to have that open mindset to be successful Finally, Your Honor, in regards to deterrence and punishment here, Mr. Henry has spent 281 days at the House of Correction, which for someone that has never been to jail before is an extremely long time. He does have a multiple sclerosis diagnosis, and he spent 5 months in custody during the pandemic, where his MS actually placed him at high risk. I certainly was concerned about that, as stress can lead to flare-ups with that, as he was, as I said, considered high risk. So certainly that was an issue while he was serving his sentence. It was very hard to watch him struggle at the HOC, to be honest. There were times he was not eating, he was not sleeping. When I would talk to him, I could just, he was depressed, he was very stressed. He has expressed to me that he will do anything to make sure that he does not go back there. The deterrent message has been strong, the punishment has been strong. It's, as he's described to me, it's been a horrible experience, which I'm not saying the HOC is supposed to be a wonderful experience, but I just want the court to know that it has been extremely hard for Mr. Henry to be there. And I certainly think that that satisfies the punishment and deterrence aspect of the sentence. And I don't think sending Mr. Henry to prison will accomplish anything that his time at the HOC happened. Rather, if we were to send Mr. Henry to prison today, again, no guarantee he would get programming. It's my understanding that the average adult male inmate costs $32,767 a year for taxpayers. And in my opinion, Your Honor, that's not a good use of taxpayer money in regards to Mr. Henry. I don't think that prison would accomplish anything other than a bad use of taxpayer money and depriving him of programming. And it would not send a deterrent message that has not already been sent by his time in the House of Correction. I think our sentence would satisfy Gallion, which says that the sentence imposed shall call for the minimum amount of custody or confinement, which is consistent with the protection of the public, the gravity of the offense, and the rehabilitative needs of the defendant. This pretrial credit satisfies, I believe, those first two portions, and probation would address the rehabilitative needs. So I think, given all those facts, Your Honor, we would ask the court to follow our recommendation. Thank you.
Counsel, thank you for your statements and your written presentation as well from your office. Now, Mr. Henry, would you like to make a statement?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, first off, I'd like to say I apologize to the gentleman that was in the grocery store that night. It was not on my mind to do what I did. If I could take it back, I would. But for the record, I would like to say I never went to that happen, even though it was remote. The footage shows that I never went to gun. I just wanted to make a purchase, and they say I purchased a 4-pack. It wasn't a 4-pack. The fact that they say they gave was incorrect. It was a 2-pack of Natural Life. I paid for it. I dropped the change on the counter and walked out. I never grabbed the bag. I put the bag on the ground outside of the door. I'm not the type to I rather work. I never took the money with me. I dropped it. As a black man being caught in that area with a firearm, bag of money, that's like come and get you type of thing. Right? It was a dumb decision. It didn't want to happen to me. I know that for a fact. And like Ms. Parent says, with being in the House of Correction, like, it's not for me. I've been in the HOC since November 2019. That's the longest I ever spent with not working. I complained to Ms. Parent for a while, a few times about working, to the point I go to the working morning. I work in the kitchen. I went from serving food on the trays, to working in the dish room, working in the bakery, to, work my mind and it's like, before I was able to work, I had to force myself to go to sleep. I don't even became stressed. I believe my belief is never take time. And just working, just that environment is toxic, not for me. Like, I've been telling myself this will be the first and last time I walk in that environment. It's not for me, it's not how I was raised. I regret the decision I made. I should have been given again, just walk out and stayed out of the store. Yeah, I have no, I have no disregard for going to like counseling. Because I'm just not a fan of nonsense. That's basically what that night led up to. Telling me the story's too packed. We got 2 cashiers and like 4 customers. I had no problem waiting in line patiently with the person, I just wanted my girlfriend stated to me to grab some light greasy cups. That's all I want. It was just disgusting though. Like they looked at me, dropped their head, raised their lip. I wasn't pleased with it. If I can write a review of that store and guilt, I would. But, it's crazy. I signed a no contact order. That contact order can stay virtue for the rest of my life. I'm not going back there. I don't drink. I don't have a need for that. If I want to go and drink, I'll just find out what the food. Yeah, I apologize for those 2 gentlemen. If we can be related to them, let's do that.
Okay, you make a very good statement. I do have some questions of you, sir. Your attorney made an excellent presentation. You graduated from Custer High?
I was the last class in Custer High School.
Okay.
Graduation was June 2011. I signed out of school and went back to work.
Okay.
I believe January of 2020.
At the present time, you're not married, is that correct?
Correct.
Do you have any children in the world where you are the birth father?
I have no clue.
Okay. However, the woman you're with, I wrote her name down, Miss Eubanks, and her daughter, Lila, Layla. You act in the role of father in the home when you're with Miss Eubanks, is that correct?
Correct.
And how-
Dance, play, all that.
And how long have you filled that role basically as father, parent for the child, Lila?
Since June 2018.
It's about 2 years, except for the time you've been in custody.
Just talking to her on the home way from the HOC, it was my fault. I told her I'd get home and do the things.
You indicate that you don't drink, yet you're in the liquor store to purchase liquor, and you indicate that was for your girlfriend, Miss Eubanks, correct?
Yeah.
However, in terms of your use of whether it's alcohol or THC, the report prepared by your attorney indicates you were involved since 2013 in using chemicals or alcohol. Is that correct?
Somewhat after researching online, cannabis can be used to treat mental.
And one of the physical conditions you have is multiple sclerosis, right?
Yeah.
Now, other than self-medicating, has a doctor prescribed THC for you?
No, because medical THC is not legalized in Wisconsin. The doctor told me multiple times that this medication was killing me, this medication was killing me. I felt like they were trying to make me laugh, but it didn't. They prescribed, the first one they prescribed me was Tecfidera. The milligrams went from 120 to 240. And I felt no relief.
Beyond the multiple sclerosis, which is serious, the report also indicated that at least at one time you had a vision issue. Is that correct?
Yeah, spring of 2013, I lost the vision in my left eye. The best thing the doctor did was give me insulin steroids. So they put the IV in my arm.
Are you able to see now?
Yeah, I just got bad vision in my left eye. I need to wear glasses, but they were trying to prescribe me some glasses that I also couldn't. I never heard that.
Thank you for your statement and that of the attorney. Mr. Henry, you're to be sentenced on armed robbery, as noted, maximum penalty 40 years and or $100,000 or both. A very serious crime with serious potential consequences. You're a young man, 27 years of age. The way the incident was first described, both attorneys addressed what occurred. You're in a liquor store, and there was an issue with whoever was in charge at the store. But from your perspective, you viewed that as being disrespected. The disrespected feeling that you had resulted in anger, and then the anger led you to the crime. Now that's kind of crazy thinking. In life, people, all of us go through life. There are problems we have, and sometimes we're disrespected or people do things that are wrong. But one of the things about being an adult, and you're a young adult, is to, first, that shouldn't happen, but if it does, to find an appropriate way to deal with anger. When I was in school as a young boy, nuns would say, don't get angry. Well, you get angry, that's part of being human. What they should have taught me is how to deal with anger. And your attorney, one of the recommendations she makes very wisely is the anger management program. All of us, doesn't mean you, me, anybody. We get angry, and what do we do with it in a way that doesn't diminish us or harm or diminish anyone else? Now, you have no prior record. That certainly is positive. You also have an exceptionally good work record. You worked in home remodeling for an outfit called Munger, lawn care. You're the home nurse for your mother, and I'm going to get back to her in just a moment. Security guard, FedEx, Speedway Gas, Kmart, McDonald's. You had many, many jobs, and that's consistent with the statement you made and your attorney made regarding your time at the House of Corrections, longest time you haven't worked. You want to get back to work, both to support yourself, and in this case as well, your involvement with Ms. Eubanks and her child. But very good work record. As was pointed out, neither Ms. Eubanks or yourself, the issue wasn't economic in terms of committing this offense. It related, again, disrespect, anger, and then the consequence of the offense itself. Well, you're not married. You're in this relationship with Ms. Eubanks and her child, Lila, where you actually occupy the role of parent, father in terms of caring, or dad in terms of caring for that child. You also have a strong family. You don't know who your father is.
I see a picture of him, but I was a kid, my mom told me he passed away. I never met him.
All right. But your mother must have been an outstanding woman. She had 12 children. You were the youngest. You have 11 siblings. During the time before your mom actually passed, as a result of renal failure, you were involved in providing care for your mom. And hopefully some of the other kids in your family, the other young men and women, did the same in caring for their mother, your mother. You also experienced the hardship of one of your siblings, a sister, who was killed in the year 2016 as a victim of a crime. Again, your demeanor is excellent. You present yourself very well. You're articulate. I want to give you a compliment in that regard. Although you were involved since at least 2013, where alcohol and THC would be involved, I'm accepting your statement that basically alcohol and addiction isn't the motivating factor either for this offense or basically a problem in your life, although it's a matter that can be tested in terms of alcohol and drug assessment. And then if there is still an issue there, that can be dealt with in terms of treatment. Again, your serious health issues, multiple sclerosis, as well as vision issues. Have you applied for or are you now receiving SSI because of that health condition?
No, since I got my business back, I don't deal with anything. It's like, it's also like be angry, or stressed out. And that would cause like, what the doctor said, like, yeah, I was really down, appetite, stuff like that, but I'm a people person, I just don't put myself around people that need to have a club, like to get mad at each other.
And that may work, but there still may be times if your life is like mine and everyone else's, there'll be some times you're going to get angry. It just happened. And the issue of how you deal with it, one, you can deny you ever get angry, or the other is to, when you do get angry, to deal with it in a way that's appropriate. Whether you walk around the block or ponder it or get counseling or talk to a friend, you got to find a way to deal with it as opposed to saying, well, I'll never get angry. Well, maybe you'll be the one out of 8 billion people that can do it, but the likelihood is you'll get angry from time to time in your life. Now, I note in terms of the crime itself, it's a crime that is serious. It affects, although you obtained money, but it affects particular person who is at the other end of the gun. For some people, they never get over that and the fear that causes personally in their life. It's aggravated again because of the gun, mitigated, no other prior offenses, and you are totally responsible for what occurred. The reasoning of disrespect to anger to crime, maybe when you're 13 or 12 or 8, but not as a 26 or 7-year-old man. The public has a right to be safe. That includes Ms. Eubanks, members of your family, people you love and care about, but it includes everyone else. The rights can't just be for some, it has to be for all of us. The concept of focusing on your rehabilitation isn't just a subset, that's required. And whatever is done, there has to be a focus on providing whatever help is needed. This incident should be the only time you come into court because of a crime. And from your own statements, that appears the direction you're headed, that you've taken it seriously and you're not going to be back again. I also must consider the gravity of the offense and statements of the victims. May I ask the district attorney, are either of the persons and their initials were given as BS and PS, are they appearing or?
No, we contacted them, so they were aware of the hearing, but I would like a chance to contact them about the restitution part of it.
Okay, I heard that, thank you. I've also had a chance to read Ms. Eubanks' letter. She comments very positive statements about you and your involvement with her. Now, in terms of what should be done in this case, I do find that a period of confinement is necessary to protect the public because of the serious nature, and that does focus on the punishment aspect of it. But ultimately, the sentence has to focus on rehabilitation as well. I think if only a sentence of probation were used for an armed robbery with a loaded gun, where that was used, where a gun was used, that would unduly depreciate the seriousness of the offense itself. I do note, and I find very persuasive, the fact that programs for rehabilitation that are part of the prison system in the United States, and certainly in our state, that basically they're on hold during the coronavirus issue that affects our state and affects the United States as well. And the absence of programming is a legitimate factor to consider in terms of using the prison system if those programs are not available. Now, with all that being said, the court's going to act as follows. The order of the court in this matter that you be committed to the Wisconsin State Prison System, DOC, for a period of 15 months of initial confinement to be followed by a period of 24 months of extended supervision. With respect to that order of commitment, you're to receive credit for time served of 281 days. In terms of the period following the 15 months of initial confinement, where you're on 24 months of extended supervision, there is to be not a fine imposed. I find that's not appropriate. You're not working at the present time, but you must pay the court costs. And once you are released from prison and after you're out for 60 days, you're to make payments of at least $70 a month toward the court costs and any mandatory surcharges. Counseling is to occur as the agent deems appropriate, but I'm going to follow the recommendation of your attorney. At a minimum, the counseling is to include anger management. That seems to be the weakness here. So many things are going right in your life, in particular as the youngest of 12 children, but you cross the line because what someone did, whatever that happened there where you were disrespected was wrong, but then you cross the line in terms of anger and then the crime. That should never occur again, because there are options that when you or I have anger issues where we can deal with that in a way that doesn't diminish us or others. Other counseling can occur as the agent would deem appropriate. You must provide a DNA specimen since you've now been convicted of a crime. You can't vote again until your civil liberties have been restored, and you may never possess a firearm ever. You understand that last point? I want you to succeed, not to fail. You can't even reside with someone who legitimately has a right to possess a weapon. You understand that? Now, again, many people, whether it's on probation or extended supervision, they end up going back because of a violation of the rules. I don't want that to happen in your case. Again, with giving you credit for the time served that your attorney has brought out, it's a relatively short stay in the prison system, and they may even opt for a different choice of using DOC. You're also to be eligible for all DOC programs that exist. There may be new ones that come into existence. I know sometimes we indicate specific ones, but any that are available that they would find you could in fact participate, you're to be eligible for them. You're not to have any contact ever with the RK liquor store. You understand that? You can go anywhere else in the world, great world, but you can't go there. You're also never to have any contact with the individuals there. The initials are P as in Papa Sam, PS, and BS, Bravo Sierra. So you can associate with others, but you're never to have contact with them again. They were the persons who were affected by the crime. Do you understand that point?
Yes, sir.
District Attorney, any other on conditions of the extended supervision?
No, sir.
Same opportunity, Mr. Parent, had some great ideas. I tried to incorporate them. Any other conditions you want or programs you want for your client in the extended supervision?
No, Your Honor, I believe you covered everything. Thank you.
All right, to Mr. Henry, is there anything I've ordered here that you feel you could not do?
Yes, sir.
Well, I hope you succeed. You apparently have a good relationship with someone. You're acting in the role of a father. You have a good work record. Life can have a lot in store for you, but when some bad things happen in your life or mine, you can't revert over to crime. And again, you went 27 years without a crime. There's no reason for you ever to go back in that area again. Sir, good luck to you, truly. Good luck to you.
All right, so,
Yeah, appeal rights, Ms. Parent, will you take care of that, ma'am?
yeah, that is just.
Well, here's my thought. Why don't you just pick the day when you're gonna be here? That way you can see if they're gonna pursue it. If they are, and you set a hearing date, great, and you get back in place or something, you have to do by step, as opposed to setting a hearing date, pick the date you're gonna be here and we'll see if you're going to follow.
Deputies, did Mr. Allen ever come on the return of property? Did he ever show? Okay, and it's a little after 3, so.